Hi guys, it's me Gordon from G-Dubs. So today is the day that we are going to fit the Sargent EC-160. Okay guys, so today is the very exciting day when we are going to fit this little baby, the Sargent EC-160. You might have seen the little video I did where I showcased this little thing, just sort of had a little chat about it, sort of things that it can do. It might be worth, just if you've not seen that one, have a look back in the history and have a little look back at that. Now obviously you can have all sorts of different things wired into this. Basically your own imagination is going to dictate what you might have, where you're going to have LED lights, what sort of setup you're going to have, whether you're going to have USB charging points, whether you've got need electric for a fridge, maybe even for a diesel heater, all different things like that, battery charger, solar panels going into it. So I can't cover all of that stuff. This is the disclaimer. Disclaimer, I am not an auto electrician. I am in no way or means qualified. So do not, I repeat, do not copy what I'm doing. I will not be liable for your stupidity. If somebody dies in this video, it shouldn't be my fault and it should only be me, not you. So this is the back of the Sargent EC-160. It's got lots of different terminals in it, and these basically tell you what each one is. So you've got 4 grounds, then you've got a permanent live, you have got something for the lights, you've got the water pump, you've just got a general auxiliary feed which you can use for any sort of wiring, you've got a split charger, and then you've got the fridge electric in and out. Also here you've got the ground for the vehicle electrics, you've got LBs, the positive for the leisure battery, and then this is the positive for the vehicle battery. What I've just shown you there, that was all the 12 volt, but this is for the mains electric. You've got live, earth and neutral, and that's 1 plug, 2 plug, 3 plug. So you can have 3 different plug outlets, and then this orange lead that's on the back, I've got the end of it here. This is basically to hook it up to the mains electric bit. So in my glove box I've got a 3-pin connector that this is going to connect to. There's also a little earth here that goes to the body of the van. So if you've seen it in my previous videos, you'd have seen when I cut the holes for where I'm going to put my light switches and my USB charger. I'm just going to very quickly pop all these things back in, show where I'm going to put the wiring, and then also I'm going to show where under this cupboard where I put my leisure battery. I've already done a video which is on how to wire up this, which is all the electrics, and then they've got the earth there for the split charger. The Sargent EC-160, this actually already has a split charger built into it, but I'd already got this Durite one as part of my split charge relay pack, so I'm using that. I'm not actually going to wire in the split charge that's on the Sargent EC-160, not at the moment anyway. I need to look into whether or not I can have both on there, or if not, do I need to negate this one and remove it and just go with the Sargent one? What's the better way to do it? So at the moment I'm just going to wire it up so that it's working off the leisure battery, the alternator charges the battery, and then when I'm on a site I can just plug in the 16 amp, and then that'll run all of my electric. The Sargent will prevent the mains battery being drained by any of the electrics, because they're all just going to be directed straight to the leisure battery through the Sargent. So I'm at the back of the vehicle, and you can see here this is the hole that I've already cut for the Sargent EC-160. And one of the things that you need whenever you're doing wiring, I find it's easy just to get everything out that you need, or that you can feasibly need. I've got a massive reel here that I bought off of eBay, just really cheap, just 12 volt wire that's beefy enough for what we're going to be putting through it. I've got loads of just odd bits of electrical things down there, odd connectors and different things that I've collected. Another thing that's really handy, just an assortment of crimp terminals. I just bought a massive box of them cheap off of eBay. And then the other thing I've got in here is just an assortment of a few different types of wires. I've got a digital multimeter, another little box just with all different connectors in and things. I tend to keep little odd boxes and just ram them full of stuff. Oh, and obviously, of course, one of the things you do need is just lots of wire, like red wire, so you can basically tell it's live. I've got some earth wire as well, which is nice and chunky. First thing that we're going to focus on is these little LED lights that you can see along the plinth. Now there's a video that I've done which is in the playlist, so go back and watch that, which is actually in how to wire these in. Okay, so I'm going to try and explain this. It's going to get quite complicated, so for some of you, just give up on this video, it might be a bit technical. So what we've got, I've got the LED lights which I've just shown you, and basically if I show you on here, we've got this little double gang switch on, off, on, off. this one is going to do my plinth lights, and this one here is going to do my LED lights. I haven't quite fitted those yet, but they're going to go along the roof. So I'm going to have 6 of those just going along the center of the roof. The way that you wire these up is like so. You have along the bottom of the units, you've got your LEDs. So they're all linked up together, boom, 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 to there. And then you've got your EC-160 here, and then you've also got your 6 or however many you've got LEDs up in the ceiling, and they're all wired up like that, as these are. Let's do them like that so you can see what they are. And then you've also got yourself a switch. Now my switch has got 2 switches, so we'll draw this in the middle. So we've got the switch, and then it's cut here, so you've got switch number 1 and switch number 2, the negative, and then on here there is a positive. And so what I've done, I've basically connected the negative from this goes to here, and the negative from this splices into there. So that's one lead that comes out and splits into the 2 of those. There's a feed that comes off of here, so it goes into the bottom switch, and then this feed powers both of these switches. And so I've got number 1 goes to my lights, and then number 2 goes, that's obviously not broken, but that goes along this way to there. So this is one wire, this is another wire, they're not spliced together. And that is that. Hopefully that hasn't confused you too much. I'll show you now what it looks like actually on the switch. This is the 3-way switch, and so this is the power in, this little one by my thumb, and that comes, this wire basically runs all the way to the Sargent EC-160. This wire here goes all the way to my LED lights on the ceiling, which I haven't wired in yet, and then this wire here, that goes down to the red on the plinth lights. All of the electrics in here, they're all 12 volts, so you'll have an LED light much like this one, or the ones that I've got in the plinth, and then they have basically this, it's like speaker wire that trails out of it. In most cases it will be black and red, so you've obviously got red is your positive, black is your negative. You can see that there. Some of them have these like little plastic connectors on, but they'll all have a couple of wires like that on the end, and what you do, you just strip these back. And so where I'm talking about positive and negative, I'm talking about which one your live's going to go down, which would be the positive, which is red, and negative, which is black. If they're not like that, then they'll be just colour coded like speaker wires. So on this LED that I showed you, they're both white. One of them's got a black line running down it. I don't know if you can see it, but one's got a dotted black line just running down it, so I know that's the negative. It's really easy to wire it, quite how you chase the wiring, whether you drill holes through your units and just run them along the floor. Some people have piping up and along the roof, and they just slide it all through there, and then you've got a clear run where all your wires go. You may need to replace things like LED lights and stuff, so I tend not to solder them in. I prefer to keep these little connectors on the end, because that means I can detach and replace individual ones if they blow, which they will do eventually, or if one of them goes faulty. It just means you've not got to rip things up, so resolder. So you've got these LED lights that, if I can get around the back, you'll see there, and they've got black and red leads, and they're basically run in parallel all the way along. One's connected into another, and then that wire chases up through the back of the unit and pops out here. And so what I've got here, I've got, this is the earth that goes basically from the back of those lights all the way to the Sargent EC-160, and there's obviously a trim that I'm going to fit on there just to make it look all pretty. And then just here next to it in the unit, I've got a USB plug, and this is exactly the same. This is really straightforward. So this has just got one wire positive, one wire negative, and that cable runs all the way around the back of the units. I've kept it bare so you can see it just here. It runs all the way across the back there. I'm going to hide that up and tidy it, and then it will pop back out of this unit here where the Sargent EC-160 is going to be, and that will just go straight into that. That's all wired in and looking lovely now, and so we'll be able to check that out and test it all out once the rest of it's all plugged in. So I've got the dual-right relay and all my bits there for the earth, and then just underneath that, under the shelf, which is there, I'm just going to fit that fuse box just under there. You can't really see it very well there. Now, one of the things I obviously showed you in this cupboard, I had lots of loose cables. All my cables are now in this little bit of conduit. That way it helps tidy them all up. It means I can stick this down here and it doesn't really show much, but I can get really easy access to it. For this next bit, we're going to collapse the bed because I need to get into where all the Sargent EC-160 is, and at the moment the headrest is just slightly in front of that. So check out this captain seats bed. So one of the things I need to fit for the fridge is just like a little secondary, I don't know, can you see that? If I put it next to my head it should focus in, a little secondary fuse box. Now what I'm going to do, this has just got 4 little mounting holes in the middle of it. So you just pop a screw, 4 screws in there. This actually came in the kit that I got from Simply Split Charging, but then I'm just going to literally stick that just underneath there, under the shelf, which is there. I'm just going to fit that fuse box just under there. You can't really see it very well there. Sometimes you need to get into awkward angles and positions to screw everything in. But this fuse box, that's almost in. That's 2 screws. I'm going to put all 4 in so I don't want it to go anywhere. Now if this was ply lined, I'd be going straight into the ply, but all I've done is carpeted over the original cardboard panels. So this will hold alright, but if it gets pulled, then it's going to come straight off. But where it is, there shouldn't be anything anywhere near it. Woo! That's in. So as part of that, with the fuse box, obviously need a lead, so that's going to connect it to the leisure battery to give it some power. I've knocked one of these together. There was some spare wire left over from the Simply Split Charging one. If you want to know how to make one of these, it's really straightforward, but just have a little look on my how to fit a split charger video. That's in the playlist. And so this is going to attach that fuse box to the leisure battery, and then I need to fit a 15 amp fuse, which is this little blue one, which is going to go in port 1, and then there'll basically just be a feed, which I've already knocked up here, just using some little cable, which will be fine. That'll carry the ampage properly. This is going to go to the fridge on the EC-160. There's actually a wiring diagram which is just here, which I will take a picture of, and I will stick a link to that in the comments below. I'll also stick it in the blog in the gwtv website. Have a little look at this diagram. If this is too complicated for you, you don't really understand what it means, and you're a bit nervous about all this, in all honesty, I would encourage you, don't take any risks with it. It's electricity, it's power. You could end up making your van body live and electrocuting yourself, particularly when you go into mains hookup. It's really dangerous. So perhaps get an auto electrician to do it, and if not, then please get an auto electrician to check over what you've done afterwards, just to sign it off, just to say that, you know, you haven't got any problems, you haven't got anything that's shorting, you haven't got any drains on your battery or anything, because otherwise you could end up at best having a flat battery, and at worst dying, which would just not be very good for anybody, now would it? So it's probably worth my while just running through some of the electrics that I've got in the back, just so you've got an idea of the setup that I'm going for. So I've got a USB charger here. That's just got a 12-volt wire running straight along the back of this panel behind the seat, and then it runs underneath the threshold of the back doors, and then it basically pops up through this hole where the EC-160 is. The next thing I've got to wire in is that fridge. So there are 2 connections for the fridge. One is the fridge in, and that goes to the leisure battery. That's 15 amp fused. Again, that'll all be on this diagram. That's for my particular setup. It might be different on yours. And then I've got a fridge out, and that basically runs all the way along into the back of the EC-160, no fuses or anything like that. The fridge in is just straight to the battery. That's basically pulling the live current, and then that goes along to the fridge out. The fridge out comes straight out of the EC-160. That's just a power lead, not fuse. That goes to the red wire of the fridge, and then the black wire of the fridge, that basically just goes to the negative of the leisure battery, just to ground it and earth it and to close the circuit. I know this is confusing. It's confusing me. On this side, I've shown you how I've wired these in, but this USB one here, that is the same. It's just got a positive and a negative that run off the back of it, and that goes through to the EC-160. So what I'm going to do, the one that's here and the USB one that is just here, they're both going to go into the auxiliary power of the EC-160. So then the lights, they'll go in the one that's marked up lights. The fridge is managed by its own one, and then other than that, I've only really got this pop-up socket, which is here. That's going to connect into one of the 3 mains 240 volt electric feeds. There's 3 plugs on this, so that's going to be more than ample for the other one. So the others at the back, they're just as a reserve really. So the main reason I've got those is if we've got a tent or anything like that that we're using as an awning, I can easily run off of those and out of the back barn doors. I can use it for things like an air pump for pumping up mattresses. I'm in the back of the van. Excuse all the noise from the traffic. I can't really do much about that. Sadly, the only place I've got to work on this is the main road. I've got all of the wires here. You can see they're all coming through for all the different things. One of the things that I find really handy is just to put a little bit of electrical tape on the end and right on there, whether it's for the fridge, whether it's 12 volt USB, whether it's a switch. Then when you come to wire it in, you're going to know exactly where they all go. So one of the things the Sargent EC-160 has got is this orange cable. So this is basically the lead for the 240 volt electric. And so what I've done, I've just gone to Wilco's and bought one of these little connectors. It's only a couple of quid, but then that way I can connect that onto the Arctic cable. And that way we've got like a really nice strong connection there. We can hide the excess just down the back of the unit, so that's not a problem. Better to have too much wire coming out here, so you've got a bit of room to play with, than have it too tight and you're trying to actually do things up, which I've got 1 or 2 leads that are a little bit short when it's half hanging out, which isn't ideal really. These connectors for the 240 volt mains, they're pretty cool. There's 2 holes there for live, neutral and earth. And you can see there's 3 outlets, so potentially you could actually have 6 plugs, each of these doubling up. So the 240 volt mains, that's all wired up now. So I've got the power that comes up, that comes from the glove box, goes through to there. That's where the mains hookup is, and then we've got these sockets here are wired in, this one, and then this one here is for the pop-up thing, which is just around the corner there. So the first one in is the water pump, that goes in under there, it says pump. Next one is the fridge, so I've got that in here, that's the fridge in. So this fridge out, which is the first one, that goes to the red wire on the fridge, and then this fridge out, that goes to the leisure battery, and it's got a 15 amp fuse on it. So next up are the lights, which are just in here. And also the earth for those, which is in the 3rd one. So you're looking at this one here and this one here. That's all the 12 volt wired up now. I've just added in the left hand and right hand USB. I've put one of the USBs in on the auxiliary, and I've put one of the USBs in on the permanent live. I want to just show you something. It's not all finished yet, but we're nearly there. Okay, so just next to me here is the Sargent EC-160. Now I've got it all wired up temporarily. I've put in the last lives, which are basically 2 15 amp fuse lives. One's from the leisure battery, one's from the car battery. Now where I've taken those from, I'm taking the car battery just from before the voltage sensing relay. That was already 15 amp fuse right up by the battery, and then the other one I'm taking off that fuse box, the secondary one, which I just showed you. So I've stuck another 15 amp fuse in there and got a separate feed going directly to that, and then this has got a ground that basically goes to the multi ground that I've got right next to the voltage sensing relay. So there's basically 3 wires all going to the same sort of location. So I've got the Sargent EC-160, I think you can see it just behind me. This is all tidied up and put in. I've put in some little hex bolts there just because they're easier for me to fit, and then I've tidied up some of the wires in the back, and I've got quick access through this cupboard. So just like magic, all of a sudden these lights are in. There's another video that will follow this video, which is how to wire in LED lights into a pop top roof just like this one. And so I've clicked my fingers, they're already done. Check out the next video to see how I did this. I've put everything back together, I've tidied the van up so I can just show you very quickly how it all works. So this is the Sargent EC-160. This is the power switch which turns it on and off. This switch here switches between the leisure battery and the vehicle battery, which you can just see leisure and vehicle there, and then this tells me the voltage that the battery is running on. So obviously that's just turned the power off. I've now switched on to the vehicle battery. So you can see both of those, they're running on good charge at the moment, about 12 volts. So I'm going to ping it back to the leisure battery. The next switch, this is for the lights, so that turns the feed to the light switches, that turns that on and off. So if I turn that off, it's obviously on at the moment, I lose my power, but I've still got my voltage on there, which you can see. And then the next switch is for the water pump, which I haven't actually wired in yet, but that's very, very straightforward. These are the fuses for permanent live, the water pump, the fridge, auxiliary, the lights, the charger. So that's really cool. And then in this bit, just down here, this is the RCD box, so this is for the 240 volt mains. The switches that I showed you earlier, I'm just going to show you. I'm going to turn the power off just so you can see this. So the lights are going to go off. So this little blue light that you can see there, that is my USB charger. And then these two switches, this first one here, this does my plinth lights, and this one here, this does the main LED lights, which you can see are running along the ceiling. There's 6 of those. So one of the really cool things about having the USB charger is obviously my kids can connect into that. Even I can, I've got my iPad here. So if I just show you very quickly, if I connect into there, and then there we go, look, that's charging now. It says 87% charged. Now sadly I'm unable to test the mains electric. It's all wired in, but I haven't got myself an electric hookup lead, so I'm going to get one of those. It should be fine. I'm not envisaging any problems with that. The other thing I'll show you quickly actually is the fridge. So here's the fridge, and so that comes on and off. There's actually a little switch in here that turns the power off and on like that. You can see the light going off and on. So when I'm not using it, I can just leave it turned off. So there we go, guys, that's the Sargent EC-160 done. I am one very, very happy guy. Don't forget that you can check us out on www.gwtv, also GWTV on Instagram, on Facebook and on Twitter. Please do give me a thumbs up if you've liked this video. Post out anything helpful in the comments and subscribe as well. Cheers guys, see you in the next video.